Hello, welcome to Alchemize Yourself Tarot. And right now I'm kind of continuing breaking down the twin flame journey as an alchemical process, an alchemical journey, and breaking down and identifying archetypes that will play out in these dynamics. And there are many. You see a lot of archetypes in spiritual journeys and spiritual relationships, because many times the romanticizing of a relationship or the mystifying of a relationship is based on common archetypes. And you see these in movies and books, and that's why it's so addictive. That's why it can lead to so much drama and bondage for people experiencing it. So the lover and the trickster dynamic is like a rich archetypal relationship that blends that deep emotional intensity with the chaos and the challenge and the transformation. This pair can create a lot of electric chemistry, but it's also a lot of emotional confusion and spiritual growth. And the spiritual growth coming from only if the partners are actually willing to evolve. So, obviously a lot of times these dynamics implode. They're not dynamics that you can sustain for too long, just because they're not always healthy. They're more based on our projections. So with the lover, you have, passion, and you have devotion, vulnerability, emotional intensity, very idealistic, very romantic. But the shadow traits of the lover archetype are the over-attachment, romanticizing pain, losing boundaries, being needy or martyr-like. So that's where the lover archetype can fall into that shadow aspect. And then with the trickster, the archetypal qualities of a trickster are that charisma. They're clever, they're elusive, they're unpredictable, provocative, playful, right? Impulsive. But the shadow traits of the trickster are they're manipulative, they're avoidant, commitment phobic, dishonest, emotionally unavailable. So you see where the dynamic clashes. The needs are completely opposite. So it's kind of a crazy dynamic. And you see this play out with people's twin flame journeys. The runner chaser dynamic. The intensity of coming together, but then you immediately separate from this person because it's just too intense. And you have very different needs. One wants to attach while the other one wants that freedom, that push-pull. So you have emotional vulnerability versus that emotional evasion. Someone being the lover seeks the deep connection, and the trickster is dodging it, not out of malice, but out of fear of entrapment or boredom. So that creates the push-pull pattern that leaves the lover confused and the trickster feeling hunted down. And also the idealization versus reality distortion. The lover may project soulmate fantasies onto the trickster, who constantly shapeshifts, right? The magician and challenges these illusions, right? The trickster in turn often mirrors the lover's wounds back to them in very unexpected ways. So it's like I said, it can be very transformative, but very painful, these connections, because it's exposing all those vulnerabilities. And the trickster, from running, they're actually exposing weakness and vulnerability too, because they're not able to actually ground anything either. So both archetypes are basically exposing their wounds. But the chaos is kind of acting as a catalyst. The trickster disrupts the lover's longing for emotional certainty, but this disruption can lead to profound awakening, especially if the lover turns inward to confront their inner void rather than chasing that external validation, which happens in that Queen of Wands in the reverse energy, needing validation, being overly sexualized. So there's a lot of romantic chemistry that plays out here versus the emotional misalignment. There's often that sexual tension and the magnetic attraction, but the emotional needs may be unmet unless both evolve beyond these archetypes, which is very hard to do. You know, it's very hard for people to grow, evolve, and change out of their core essence, right? So somebody has to be awakened and aware in order to do that inner work. And usually one person does and the other person doesn't. So that's where you have that misalignment with the star in the reverse. You know, so the potential for growth here is only when the lover learns to give love without losing the self. Stop romanticizing emotional inaccessibility and healing that inner child who believes love must be earned through suffering. Those are the big growth points for the lover. And then the trickster needs to face their fear of vulnerability, using wit and charm to build trust, not escape it. Yeah, those qualities are very charming, but you're not using it to be manipulative, right? Or play people. And you have to acknowledge the power you hold in other people's hearts. A lot of times these trickster or player type people, they don't understand how much they can hurt people. They're very detached from emotions and feelings. And they may not even be consciously aware of that. So it's about building that awareness. And usually these dynamics appear when there are karmic lessons at play. The trickster awakens the lover to their illusions, and the lover calls the trickster towards emotional accountability. If integrated, they can become a sacred mirror to one another, leading to union versus pursuit. But just to warn you, this is very rare that it actually plays out this way. Usually people grow and evolve out of the connection. It naturally dissolves because there's too much push and pull. You know, and it was funny because when I was pulling cards on this topic, the lover and the devil come out. It is that light and shadow aspect playing out. The desire versus the bondage. And it's like the angel and demon are at war in this dynamic. The higher versus the lower way It's like you are being challenged to leave your ego and your past behind. So it's so challenging. So who you are in this dynamic, many of you are the hermit. You're pulling away. And some of you, if you're the lover, trickster, or the third party, you're kind of stepping out of the dynamic at this time. You're reflecting on it. So if you're resonating with this reading, you're already pretty much awakened and aware to what is going on here, right? You're evaluating it, you're contemplating it, you're thinking about it, or you're ready to do that work. And the hermit isn't somebody that's seeking love or outside validation, right? They go deep within. They find their own inner light with the lantern. So you're watching this from the outside in, like you're watching this play out, like maybe you've seen this play out in your own connection. And looking in, you also have that magician energy. So there's a sense of empowerment too. There's a lot of power that gets activated in these dynamics. And I feel like the trickster energy really plays into the magician more like in the reverse, right? They have a lot of power and they like having that element of power in the dynamic because they're the ones that get to reject or step away and confuse. You know, anytime you get the upper hand, anytime you're able to emotionally confuse somebody with their value, their worth, confuse their emotions, their desires, using those things against, or, you know, yeah, basically using that against the person. So the hermit is too analytical to get too caught up in this, right? You're learning to go your own way, pull yourself out of the dynamic, which is good. I love seeing the hermit as the overall, your energy collective, because it's like you're literally looking on this relationship, like, what is this? What's playing out here? You're seeing it. You're exposing it. The divine masculine, they a lot of times understand desire and lust, but not the true knowledge and wisdom it takes to harness it. So they're working off of that fuel, that chemistry, that passion, but they don't have the inner knowledge and wisdom to harness it. You guys are learning how to harness that power for yourself. That's what's going to elevate you, stepping into your magician, taking your power back, manifesting true desire, not bondage desire, or like giving your power away in connections. That's where you're doing this real alchemy here with the temperance and the magician, because as above so below, the magician's in alignment with that power. What do you want from them that you can't give to yourself? Well, the Ace of Wands, you want that activation, you want that the passion, that desire. It's fueling something, right? It's acting as a trigger, a catalyst, or a fuel. But you're learning how to give that passion and desire back to yourself. So through creations, basically the magician is learning to channel that desire, like giving that to yourself in some way. And it's hard. It's hard because a lot of times we project our desires outward instead of channeling that energy inward. But the true role that they're playing in your life to literally drive you crazy. I mean, the Queen of Cups in the reverse is your emotions are all over the place with this person. And it makes you feel all of the parts that are unhealed. It's crazy how the cards fell out, because even when I was exploring the archetypes, it literally fell out that way. They're triggering all of that emotional wounding, all those insecurities, so you can heal and awaken to that wounding. Because that wounding or that emotional dysregulation takes you out of your power. It keeps you from being able to channel your true power. So you're already learning that. I love that, because the Hermit is more emotionally detached, more grounded. And it's like, that's the lesson this dynamic is trying to teach you. You're having to address your emotional and your material insecurities. Right? Sometimes you'll even be in a Queen of Pentacles in reverse. You'll overgive, you'll over-invest emotionally and materially, so it becomes very passive. But also over-giving. So your inner feminine isn't receptive. It's almost activating more of your masculine energy. And I was going to go deeper into that as well, how it's actually like a wounded masculine energy that plays out in these dynamics. Dysregulated action or inaction. You're losing your, where you've lost yourself in the fantasy is you're realizing this is definitely something that you have to heal at this time. You're having to balance yourself. This isn't wish fulfillment for you. Many of you have to experience a major tower moment with a person, right? You're going to have to everything gets exposed. The little dynamic that plays out can't play out anymore. It's like you can't unsee reality at a certain point. And you have to get into that strength card energy, Hermit energy, power, learning how to get your confidence and your ego back, like a healthy sense of ego, which is confidence, your ability to act in the world and not feel completely powerless, because the trickster archetype can literally do that to you, make you feel like nothing, make you feel used. So yeah, the role you're playing in this dynamic, Hermit, you're reflecting, you're ready to do that deep inner work. Yeah, guided lessons, learning stages, shadow work is big here. There's still hope, right? You separate yourself, you stop playing out the cycle, you break that bondage. What are you actually wanting from them? So you're wanting that activation, that excitement. But it's like you fall too hard with that Fool card in the reverse. But you're afraid to give that to yourself. Why? Why are you afraid to give this? Because you have this inner power. Many of you are actually very creative. Lover archetype is creative. You're able to build worlds for yourself. The imagination is a beautiful thing, but it gets all misdirected into the relationship. Glow up. Oh, yeah, you're going to have a glow up, a big positive change when you redirect that energy. And the role they're playing out is they're just like they could even be an emotional mess right now, especially if you've pulled your energy away from the trickster. They start to emotionally dysregulate because they don't have that power over you anymore, right? They're starting to have to really confront all of their emotions. So it's like it causes like a role reversal. Not that you're turning into the trickster, but a lot of times the trickster gets exposed when you pull that energy back, and then all of that unprocessed emotion floods in for that person. So it could be that they're in a queen, they're stressed, mistakes, they're uncomfortable. They're having to take responsibility now because they did catch feelings. They feel that weakness of having to play those games, that it didn't get them what they wanted. They liked you chasing them. That was feeding them energy. So it was a false sense of ego for the trickster, because they were having to manipulate somebody to get that. It wasn't coming from within themselves. And that's what the trickster has to realize, is that that power is coming from manipulation, not true self-empowerment. Truly empowered, confident people, they don't have to manipulate people to get their needs met. And many masculines or trickster energies are wakening up. They're awakening to that. And it's like you're having that breakthrough. Yes, the inner transformation, the ego death, the spiritual awakening with the temperance. Yeah, you got it. For this collective, the ones resonate, you're ready for deeper, magical, creative work now, because you're having that breakthrough, you're learning that lesson, and it's beautiful when you get to that point. There's this release, there's this inner unity that occurs with that ego death, and they have to experience that too. The star in the reverse, wheel of karma, bad choices, karmic lessons. Something was not in alignment, but it was a karmic lesson. And now you're realizing where this person was actually destroying your confidence and your power and your purpose. I'm getting that the masculine trickster energies, as an energy, what happens is they start having that ego death because they've weaponized feminine energy. So they start to experience karmic feminine energy, maybe even through actual people. That's their karma. They're starting to get more of the negative shadow feminine. That's the karmic lesson. That's the consequence. They're only going to start resonating or be able to manifest in karmic feminine. Because they've been abusing and weaponizing, whether consciously or unconsciously. That's the ego death. They realize how they've weaponized love. And you can only do that for so long until you start ending up in relationships that are just really not healthy. The only people you're going to attract in are going to be, lower vibrational, more bondage type dynamics. With that Queen of Wands in the reverse, because they were trying to put you in that role. Or whoever the lover is, whether it's masculine or feminine. The trickster tries to put the feminine in that shadow role. But once you awaken, you can no longer be put in that position. Yeah, happy single, round and round. Yeah, this person may be perpetually single. wasting time, stuck in a pattern. You know, there's nothing wrong with being single, but then you just end up in karmic patterns, round and round and round. You end up wasting time. So, yeah, the lover and the trickster dynamic can be very transformative as long as you're not continuously caught up in that pattern, because some people become very devil energy. They become very addicted to that drama, that intensity. How can we do, what's the defensive, unseen resistance to unresolved issues? Explore with curiosity. So where are you or this person being defensive? That unseen resistance. So you need that reflection, acceptance, and growth. Also, exploring why somebody's resisting. When somebody's coming, resisting, you're not going to get anywhere by trying harder, right? They're going to just get more and more defensive. And it's shadow alchemy. Turn shadows into gold by shifting your awareness. Yeah, you're doing that alchemy, empowerment, and rebirth. You're shifting your awareness, and it immediately shifts the dynamic. And the dynamic it can no longer play out anymore. One or both of you end up going through an ego death, but it ends up being gold. Yeah, anger plays out because your expectations are not met, creating frustration. Express it in a healthy way. Release growth and balance, needing to be balanced. Sometimes, the trickster gets angry because they used to feed on that power of being able to manipulate and control by having the upper hand, and it no longer works anymore. And then they end up in real karmic situations, and so they're having to go through their own alchemical journey if they choose to. It's really interesting. It can get deep, especially these cyclical karmic type relationships. But I like that many of you I'm already seeing that there are many people in the collective that have awakened to what's going on. Because when you're in the middle of it, you're feeling really emotionally, and you're feeling very dysregulated. Your desires, your emotions are all over the place. And it's very hard to get grounded and find your inner truth. And many of you are doing that with the Hermit. That's the first step, is getting it, oh. So I love that for you, collective. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I really hope to explore some of these alchemical processes deeper. There's a lot of material here I kind of want to go into about the whole twin flame dynamic that goes beyond just repeating a karmic cycle. There's so much deeper work that can happen here that's very empowering. So you're going to love that. Okay, we'll leave you there. Bye.